My name is Linnea Calder, and I turned 67 last spring. I've always been the kind of woman who notices details, how the light catches a glass rim, how people lower their voices when they think you've stopped mattering. I spent 40 years teaching literature and shelving books. So silence has never frightened me. What does frighten me, though, is cruelty delivered with a smile. That Saturday, Santa Rosa's sun was golden and sharp, the kind of light that flatters everything it touches. My daughter-in-law, Taryn, was in her element linen dress, glass of rosé, her laugh tuned for performance. The backyard shimmered with guests, her co-workers from the wellness startup, Ronan's golf buddies, neighbors in crisp shirts. I stayed near the kitchen doorway, arranging my lemon bars on a porcelain tray the way my mother once taught me. Neat rows, dusted with sugar, a small act of order in a loud world. "Mom!" Taryn called out brightly. "Bring those out, will you? Everyone's dying to try them." I carried the tray into the sunlight, careful not to trip on the uneven stones. Conversations dimmed just long enough for polite smiles. Someone said, "They look amazing." Another murmured, "How sweet of her." Then Taryn raised her glass and said, with that easy charm she uses like perfume, "She just kind of stays here, like part of the decor." Laughter flickered across the patio. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. My fingers tightened around the tray. Ronan didn't look at me. He just stared into his drink as if the ice cubes held answers. I smiled. Because that's what you do when you've spent your life making things easier for others. I placed the tray on the table, wiped a bit of sugar from my wrist, and stepped back inside. When the music started again, no one noticed I wasn't out there. I rinsed glasses in the sink, one after another, until the water ran warm and steady. By the time the guests left, the patio was clean, and my silence had hardened into something solid, something that hummed quietly in my chest. The next morning, it was still there, that hum, and it followed me into the kitchen when I heard Taryn's voice calling from the hallway, sharp, clipped, already impatient. The next morning, the house felt hollow, like it was waiting to be told what mood to have. I moved quietly, the way one does when she's trying not to disturb the surface of still water. The dishes from last night were already washed and stacked. I was rinsing my teacup when my elbow brushed a tall glass on the drying rack. It hit the tile floor and shattered with a sharp, startling sound. Before I could reach for the broom, Taryn's heels struck the hallway like gunfire. "What did you do now?" she snapped, arms folded, nails tapping her elbows. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "It just slipped." "Of course it did," she said, stepping closer. "You can't even make it through breakfast without breaking something." Her tone was cold, practiced no real anger, just disdain shaped into words. I stooped to gather the shards, the pieces bright against the white tile. "Careful," I murmured, half to myself. "Don't tell me to be careful in my own house." She cut in. "You forget. You're a guest here, and lately, you've been a bit too comfortable for a guest." Something in me faltered, then a small crack, the kind that starts deep beneath the surface. "This isn't your house, Taryn," I said quietly. Her eyes hardened. "Oh, I see. We're doing that now. Fine. If you won't leave on your own, I'll have someone come help you." At first, I thought she was bluffing, but she walked straight to the counter, pulled out her phone, and dialed. I stood frozen, a fragment of glass still in my palm, as she said into the receiver, "Yes, I need to report a trespasser. My mother-in-law refuses to leave my property." The words didn't seem real until I saw the blue and red lights flicker through the front window. 2 officers stepped inside, polite but uncertain. The way people are when they sense something shameful but don't know whose it is. They asked a few questions, glanced at my identification, and finally said it was a civil matter. When they left, the house fell silent again. Ronan appeared at the top of the stairs, rumpled, eyes downcast. She just overreacted. He mumbled. I nodded. Outside. The patrol car turned the corner, its light fading against the garden gate, the same gate Eamon built by hand. I watched until the color disappeared, and something inside me finally settled a quiet knowledge that this wasn't a misunderstanding at all. That night, I couldn't sleep. The echo of police radios still pulsed faintly in my head, mingling with the memory of glass shattering on the kitchen floor. I sat at the table until dawn, tracing the grain of the wood with my fingers. It reminded me of another table, another house, the one Eamon and I bought when we were still young enough to mistake exhaustion for accomplishment. It was 1983 when we first walked into the old Victorian on Humboldt Street. The place was sagging under its own history, peeling paint, cracked plaster, floors that sighed with every step. Eamon ran his hand along the banister and said, "It's got good bones." I laughed because he said the same thing about stray dogs and used cars. But he was right. Beneath the dust, there was something honest about that house. We couldn't afford contractors. So we did the work ourselves. I sanded the kitchen cabinets until my palms blistered. Eamon patched walls and replaced window frames. Ronan was 6 then, small enough to sleep in a blanket fort made of drop cloths. We painted the living room butter yellow because we couldn't agree on white. And Eamon wanted something that looked like sunlight even on the gray days. Those were the years of chipped nails, tomato vines, and laughter that came easily. The house had a smell paint, soap, and Eamon's cologne. It clung to the curtains and to our clothes long after he was gone. He died in that same house, in 2008, with the morning light slanting across the bedroom floorboards. After the funeral, I stayed. The silence was heavy, but it was honest. It belonged to me. 5 years later, Taryn suggested I move in with them for convenience. She promised I'd have company, that I wouldn't need to worry about maintenance or loneliness, and I wanted to believe her. So I packed my things carefully, but I left the most important ones, the deed, the tax records, and the purchase contract locked in the cedar drawer of my old desk. I told the property manager to rent the house to a quiet family. The rent covered my bills, and I thought peace might follow. I never transferred ownership, not to Ronan, not to anyone. The house with good bones was still mine, even if I no longer slept beneath its roof. 3 days passed before the phone call came. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through Ronan's old mail, when the voice on the other end introduced herself from the bank. Her tone was polite, but edged with confusion. "Mrs. Calder, we just need to verify a few details about your home equity loan application." I felt my pulse quicken. "What application?" There was a short pause, paper rustling. "The one under your property address. Humboldt Street. It lists a secondary applicant, a Mrs. Taryn Vale Calder." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "Could you send me a copy?" I asked. Within an hour, the documents arrived by email. I printed them out and stared at the signature on the final page. It was my name, written in a hand that tried too hard to imitate mine curved letters. The same looping L, but heavier, less certain. A forgery, bold and careless. I folded the papers, slid them into an envelope, and placed it on my lap. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the steady hum of the refrigerator. The sound reminded me of hospital machines, of Eamon's last days. There was something in it, an ending. Quiet, but final. That evening, I moved through the house deliberately. I packed only what mattered: my worn leather wallet, Eamon's death certificate, our marriage license, and the deed to the Humboldt Street house, the one I had kept hidden all these years. I took the small silver frame from my nightstand, the photo of us on our wedding day. My hand caught mid-laugh as he brushed paint from my cheek. On the counter, I left a note written in the calmest ink I could manage. I won't fight you for peace. Then I slipped my coat on, lifted the suitcase from the floor, and stepped into the night. The air outside was damp with the smell of eucalyptus and asphalt. I didn't look back, didn't look. By the time dawn brushed the sky pale gray, I was unlocking the door of a small roadside motel off Old Redwood Highway. The clerk didn't ask questions. I paid in cash, turned the key, and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time in years, the silence around me felt like mine. By the time sunlight reached the motel window, I had already decided what to do. I wasn't going back. Not to plead, not to explain. I boiled the motel's thin kettle, poured a paper cup of tea, and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Eamon's girl, came the familiar voice, Bastian Crowell. Still sharp despite his 75 years. Still loyal to the man who once shared his workbench and Sunday coffee. I need to see you, I said. Then come. He replied simply. His cottage sat on a quiet street near Santa Rosa Creek, ivy curling over the porch rails. Inside, everything smelled of citrus oil and old paper. He poured me proper tea in porcelain cups and listened while I explained Taryn, the police, the forged signature. When I slid the documents across his table, he adjusted his glasses and frowned. She tried to put a lien on your house, I nodded. He scanned each page, tapping his finger against the false signature. The title's still yours. Linnea, ironclad. She hasn't got a legal foothold, for the first time in weeks. My breath steadied. What do I do now? He leaned back, considering. Sell it. Fast. Clean. No open houses. You'll want a cash buyer, someone who doesn't need time or approval. I'll draw up a statement to protect you. Get a realtor you trust, and don't tell your son until it's done. I left his place lighter. On the walk back to the car, I saw 2 missed calls from Taryn, then 3. Each came with a text. We need to talk. Where are you? You can't just vanish. I deleted them all without opening. At noon, I stopped outside Mirasato Realty, a small office tucked beside a florist shop. Inside, Mira herself looked up from her desk, recognizing me instantly. Mrs. Calder. My mother used to work with you at the library. Her kindness steadied me. I told her what I needed: a discreet listing. Serious buyers only. She listened, then nodded. We'll do a private showing list, no marketing, no fuss. If the price is right, we'll have offers within days. She drafted the agreement while I waited. 10-day escrow, all cash preference, title, verified by Bastian before transfer. I signed every page with a steady hand. When I stepped outside, the afternoon wind smelled faintly of lavender from the florist next door. For the first time in years, I wasn't hiding. I was moving. The next morning, the fog hung low over Santa Rosa, turning the streets into quiet corridors of silver light. I parked a block away from the Humboldt Street house and watched as Mira stepped out of her sedan, clipboard in hand, camera slung across her shoulder. She moved with brisk confidence, the kind that makes you believe things can still be fixed. I stayed in the car. I didn't want to walk through those rooms again, the ones where every dent in the wall had a memory attached. Through the windshield, I watched her circle the property, snapping photos of the porch railings, the garden still lined with my rosemary bushes. The shutters Eamon painted a dusty blue long before the world went digital. At exactly 8 o'clock, she called. It's live, she said. I've already had 2 inquiries. I thanked her and hung up. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the strange relief that comes when a decision finally takes form. I sat in the parked car until the sun began to burn through the fog. By noon, Mira texted 3 verified buyers, all cash. I'll summarize the offers soon. At 4 o'clock, we met at a cafe downtown. Mira spread out the printouts on the table, her pen tapping softly against the margins. They're all serious. She said, one's a tech entrepreneur, another's a pair of sisters wanting a flip project. And this one, she pointed to the last document, is from a woman named Shirin Alavi, recently widowed, relocating from Sacramento. She wrote a short note asking if she could keep your garden intact. That single sentence settled it for me. Her, I said. Sell it to her. Mira smiled. Not surprised. I thought you'd choose that one. She slid the contract across the table. Once you sign, I'll open escrow. 10 days. Clean title. You'll have full payment before month's end. I took the pen. The first stroke felt heavier than I expected. The final one lighter than air. When I handed the papers back, the world outside the window seemed sharper, the colors truer, the noise distant but kind. As I stepped out of the cafe, the late sun spilled across the pavement, gold and forgiving. For the first time in years, I exhaled without holding anything back. The sale closed on a Thursday morning, quiet and efficient, just as Mira had promised. She called to confirm that escrow had cleared, the funds wired, the deed recorded under Shirin Alavi's name. 10 minutes later, I signed one final acknowledgement form and handed it back across the desk. It was done. By the following afternoon, a certified envelope arrived at the Linnea Calder house on Alder Court, hand-delivered. Signature required. Inside were the legal transfer documents, notarized, and a formal 30-day notice to vacate. The courier didn't linger. He simply said, "Sign here, ma'am," and left the packet in Taryn's trembling hands. I wasn't there to see it, but I imagined her reading the first page twice, thinking there must be some mistake, then realizing there wasn't. The property she'd posed in for her brand partnerships, the remodeled kitchen, the manicured lawn, was no longer hers to display. By sunset, the neighborhood knew. The gossip traveled faster than traffic on the freeway. Did you hear the daughter-in-law got evicted from her mother-in-law's house? Can you imagine? She built her career on that place. I didn't need to hear the words myself. Mira mentioned them later, voice low with sympathy. Ronan stopped calling. According to a mutual friend, he was still living there, moving through rooms like a shadow, avoiding questions. His silence, it seemed, was the only loyalty he had left. The first voicemail came that evening. Taryn's voice, tight and trembling. "Mom, what did you do? Please, just talk to me. We can fix this." Then another, "They're saying things online. You don't understand. This ruins everything." And another, softer. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Each message bled into the next until my phone was a list of apologies and accusations, desperate in equal measure. I never pressed play again after the third. Instead, I sat by the motel window and watched the light shift over the parking lot. The sky fading from gold to indigo, somewhere across town. The house on Humboldt Street was being emptied of someone else's certainty, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for what was gone. I felt steady, like the foundation beneath it had finally remembered whose weight it was built to bear. My new apartment sat on the 12th floor of a building near Courthouse Square, clean, quiet, and high enough that the city lights looked like a field of stars. The first night there, I opened every window just to hear something that wasn't anger or apology. The air smelled of rain and jasmine from the courtyard below. I unpacked slowly, one box at a time, the way one might rebuild a life that had nearly been erased. The days passed in a hush. I made tea in a real mug instead of a paper cup, folded laundry while the radio hummed, and walked each morning to the small bookstore downstairs. I didn't think much about Alder Court, or the house now carrying someone else's laughter. Peace, I was learning, could be ordinary. It was nearly dusk when the building intercom buzzed. The sound startled me. It had been weeks since anyone called. I pressed the receiver. "Mom, please." A voice cracked through the static. "It's me, Taryn." I said nothing at first. The silence stretched, filled with traffic and wind. "Just let me talk to you," she begged. "Please." "They're gone, Ronan. The house. Everything. I didn't think you'd actually do it. I have nowhere to go." Her words tumbled out, raw and uneven, stripped of the certainty that had once filled every sentence she spoke. I closed my eyes and saw her face the last time we'd spoken sharp, impatient, framed by the home she'd claimed as hers. "Mom," she whispered again. "Please." I could see her through the camera above the lobby door, hair damp from drizzle, coat slipping off one shoulder, eyes red. For a moment, something inside me ached, a reflex older than reason. Then I spoke, calm and clear. "Home is by consent, Taryn, not demand." Her breath caught on the line. A small sound of understanding, maybe disbelief. I didn't wait to find out which. I released the button, setting the receiver back in its cradle. Outside, the wind pressed softly against the windows. I drew the curtains, the fabric whispering as it closed. The city beyond was alive and restless, but inside, the stillness held steady, earned, and finally, mine. Morning sunlight found its way through the sheer curtains, soft and deliberate. I stepped onto the balcony with my watering can and tilted it gently over two small planters, one of mint, one of rosemary. The scent rose up fresh and clean, carrying something simple I hadn't felt in years belonging. The city below was already awake, buses sighing at corners, the faint hum of voices drifting upward from Courthouse Square. I leaned on the railing and watched, unhurried. A pigeon fluttered down to the parapet, cocked its head as if assessing the new tenant, and then stayed. Even that small trust felt like grace. When I came back inside, an envelope waited under the door. It was from Mira, neat handwriting, efficient as ever. Inside was a short letter confirming that the escrow funds had cleared. Every transfer complete, all papers settled. She'd added one line at the bottom. "You handled this with remarkable grace, Mrs. Calder, the kind people rarely notice until it's too late." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer beside my tea tins. Then I opened a smaller box, the one holding a brass tag I'd ordered a week earlier. Its engraving caught the light, "Home by consent." I screwed it onto the corner of the balcony rail, the metal warm beneath my fingers. The kettle whistled softly from the kitchen. I poured a cup of mint tea and returned to the balcony, letting the steam blur the skyline. My phone vibrated once on the table, an unknown number, and then stilled. I turned it face down. The air moved gently through the herbs, carrying their fragrance into the room. I breathed it in, feeling how quiet could expand when no one was trying to fill it. For years, I'd mistaken silence for surrender, but now I understood silence, when chosen, was not absence. It was form, it was strength taking shape. Below, the city pulsed with noise and motion, but up here, peace had a sound of its own.